Many probable systems have perceptive mechanisms far different from your own. In fact, some are based on gestalts of awareness completely alien to you. Quite without realizing it, your ego is a result of group consciousness, for example. The one consciousness that most directly faces the exterior world is dependent upon the minute consciousness that resides within each living cell of your body. And as a rule, you are only aware of one ego, at least at a time. In some systems, the individual is quite aware of having more egos than one, in your terms. The entire psychological organization is in a way richer than your own. A Christ, who is not aware of this, would not appear in such a system, you see. There are kinds of perception with which you are not familiar, worlds in which your idea of light does not exist, where almost infinite gradations of thermal qualities are absorbed in terms of sensation, not of light. In any of these worlds, the Christ drama could never appear as it appeared within your own. Now, the same thing applies to each of your great religions, though, as I have said in the past, the Buddhists come closer, generally speaking, to a description of the nature of reality. They have not understood the eternal validity of the soul, however, in terms of its exquisite invulnerability, nor been able to hold a feeling for its unique character. But Buddha, like Christ, interpreted what he almost knew in terms of your own reality. Not only of your own physical reality, but your own probable physical reality. The methods. The secret methods behind all religions were meant to lead man into a realm of understanding that existed apart from the symbols and the stories, into inner realizations that would take him both within and without the physical world that he knew. There are many manuscripts still not discovered from old monasteries, particularly in Spain, that tell of underground groups within religious orders who kept these secrets alive, when other monks were copying old Latin manuscripts. There were tribes who never learned to write in Africa and Australia who also knew these secrets, and men called speakers who memorized them and spread them upward, even throughout northern portions of Europe before the time of Christ. Offhand, the work involved could take 5 years, for there were several versions and a group of leaders each going in different directions who taught their people. The world was far more ripe for Christianity than people supposed because of these groups. The ideas were buried already throughout Europe. Many important concepts were lost, however. The emphasis was on practical methods of living, quite simply, rules that could be understood, but the reasons for them were forgotten. The Druids obtained some of their concepts from speakers. So did the Egyptians. The speakers predated the emergence of any religions that you know, and the religions of the speakers arose spontaneously in many scattered areas, then grew like wildfire from the heart of Africa and Australia. There was one separate group in an area where the Aztecs dwelled at a later date, though the landmass was somewhat different then, and some of the lower cave dwellings at times were underwater. Various bands of speakers continued through the centuries. Because they were trained so well, the messages retained their authenticity. They believed, however, that it was wrong to set words into written form, and so they did not record them. They also used natural earth symbols, but clearly understood the reasons for this. The speakers singly existed in your Stone Age period and were leaders. Their abilities helped the caveman survive. There was little communication, however, in those days between the various speakers, and some were unaware of the existence of the others. Their message was as pure and undistorted as possible. It was for this reason, however, through the centuries, that many who heard it translated it into parables and tales. Now, strong portions of Jewish scriptures carry traces of the messages of these early speakers, but even here, distortions have hidden the messages. End of part 3 of chapter 17 of Seth Speaks, the Eternal Validity of the Soul. Let's talk about it. Here Seth is conveying several key points in this passage. Diversity of perceptive mechanisms. Seth suggests that there are numerous systems or worlds with perceptive mechanisms vastly different from our own. Some of these systems have awareness based on unique gestalts of consciousness that are alien to human understanding. Then he talks about group consciousness and ego. Seth explains that our individual egos are actually a result of group consciousness. Our primary consciousness, which interacts with the external world, relies on the collective consciousness residing within each cell of our bodies. Then he talks about richer psychological organizations. In some of these systems, individual awareness extends beyond a single ego, and the psychological organization is more complex and rich than what humans experience. Seth implies that beings in such systems may have a deeper understanding of reality. Then he talks about diverse perception. Seth highlights that there are worlds where our concept of light does not exist, and sensations are experienced in terms of thermal qualities rather than light. This diversity of perception shapes the nature of reality in these worlds. Next, Seth talks about variation in religions. Seth suggests that the way religious and spiritual experiences manifest in these different systems can vary significantly. He mentions that Christ's story, for example, would not unfold the same way in these alternate worlds. Next, he talks about, and I think this is a very important point here, purpose of religious methods. Seth claims that the secret methods behind various religions were intended to lead individuals to inner realizations and understanding beyond the symbols and stories. These methods were meant to bridge the gap between the physical and non-physical realms. Then there was the part about the transmission of knowledge. Seth talks about underground groups within religious orders and tribes in Africa, Australia, and other regions that preserved and passed on these spiritual secrets orally. This knowledge predates known religions and was transmitted through speakers. That brings us to the pure message of the speakers. The speakers were individuals with special abilities who existed in the Stone Age. They communicated their message without physical interaction and believed in keeping their wisdom pure. Over time, others turned their teachings into parables and tales, which are sometimes reflected in Jewish scriptures but have been distorted. Overall, Seth is highlighting the diversity of consciousness, perception, and spirituality across different systems and how this diversity influences the nature of religious experiences and teachings and those systems. If you've enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, giving the video a like, and of course sharing with a friend. What did you think about what Seth had to say in this particular passage? Leave it in the comments below. And until the next time, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you.